The agenda for tonight is to briefly introduce the project team, talk about the project area in need, talk a little bit about the alternative concepts that Mass DOT thoroughly investigated and considered for the interchange reconstruction. If any of you came to round 2 of our public meetings, you saw those alternatives at that meeting. We're going to kind of go through the alternative analysis, and at the end, announce to folks what the preferred alternative is for the interchange and why. And then, like I said, we'll be here to answer questions and discussions on this. This is the third round of public meetings. The first round was about 1.5 years ago. We came out to you folks, the public, the residents, the folks who use the interchange, the folks who travel through it, travel around it. The intent of the first round was to hear what your experiences in the interchange were. We wanted to hear where you saw the accidents, where you saw the congestion, where you were coming from, where you wanted to go to, and in general, what you wanted to see for the future of the interchange. The second round of public meetings was 7 or 8 months ago. At that point, we prepared and presented the 3 alternatives that met the project purpose and need that were currently under consideration. We showed you all of the data for the alternative analysis, and then we kind of took a step back and listened to what you folks had to say about the alternatives, about the data, about the engineering presented for those 3 alternatives. Federal Highway Administration is a close technical and financial partner for the project. Mass DOT is a design consultant team led by HNTB that also includes Howard Stein Hudson, Tetra Tech, Green International, and Harris Miller and Hanson. Each one of those firms brings a particular specialty to the overall team and really create a good world-class design team for the project. We're happy to have them. If you're here, it's because you're interested and familiar with the interchange, so we're not going to talk a lot about the existing area, but in general, you know that I90 runs east-south, 495 runs, east-west, 495 runs north-south. All of the movements today go through the southwest quadrant where the former toll booths are. Those movements still go through there, even though the toll booths are no longer there. Removing the toll booths and going to the AETS give us the opportunity to really take a fresh look at the interchange and to come up with a design that's considerably safer, considerably reduces congestion. In the southwest quadrant is the Roosevelt Farms residential neighborhood. In the southeast quadrant, there's a large DCR-owned parcel right adjacent to the interchange in the corner, and the Hopkinton Country Club to a little bit further to the southeast. Fruit Street runs over 495 just south of the interchange. To the north, you've got the MBTA Worcester line that goes under 495 and I90. Similarly, the Sudbury River winds its way through here and goes under 495 and I90. The CSX Transflow facilities, northwest quadrant. Cumberland Farms has a large regional distribution facility that takes up the majority of that northeast quadrant. You'll see Route 9, 495 interchange just here at the top of the map. One thing to note that's not specified on this figure is that a considerable amount of the entire interchange area is wetlands. It's a cedar swamp area of critical environmental concern, which is a state-regulated, sensitive environmental resource area. In fact, it was the first ACEC in the state. It's one of the things that dictate some of the things we can do, some of the things that we considered as we took a look at the particular alternatives. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Cahill. Joe is the project manager for HNTV and the entire design team.
Thank you. Like Ryan said, this is our 3rd round of public meetings, so each successive round of meetings we've gone a little bit farther with the design and the presentation. The first round was very much data collection. We wanted to hear from people as far as what people identified as the issues and to present some of what we were seeing from an existing conditions standpoint. Last round we presented the alternatives that were under consideration and some preliminary evaluation of them. So now this meeting, we're going to spend some time talking through that evaluation and then focus mostly on what Mass DOT has identified as the preferred alternative that's going to be carried through design. So going back, so we've spent the last 1 to 2 years doing extensive data collection efforts. We looked at traffic conditions, crash rates, the environmental conditions that Ryan mentioned as far as what's surrounding the interchange, and use that to really help guide our process. And what we found is that the interchange, as many of you that drive through the interchange know, doesn't meet the current traffic conditions today, and not surprisingly, doesn't meet them in the future. It has a high crash rate. See a crash out there every 3 to 4 days on average, and a lot of that is due to the undesirable weaving and queuing conditions. So traffic backs up from the ramps onto the main line highway. Also through the former toll plaza area, you have to weave, a lot of weaving movements to get through that area. So they all help contribute to a higher crash rate, above average crash rate for the interchange. So with that, the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish with this project is to improve the safety and operational efficiency at the system interchange of these two nationally and regionally significant interstate highways. These are both very important highways in the regional transportation network. They're important from a freight perspective, from a passenger perspective. We showed a figure early in the earlier presentations 9 months ago that roughly half of the freight traffic, the truck traffic entering eastern Massachusetts uses this interchange, so it's an extremely important from a freight perspective as well. So I'm just going to run through the 3 alternatives that we had studied that were determined to meet the project's purpose and need that I just outlined. But before I run through them, just to touch on a couple things that are consistent improvements across the 3 alternatives, so I don't have to repeat them each time we talk about an alternative. So first, see, all acceleration and deceleration lanes are lengthened. So when I was talking about the crash issue, one of the issues is those acceleration and deceleration lanes, they're short. They're very short for what is needed out there today, and that helps contribute to those crash rates and the congestion issues. So all alternatives that we were studying improved those acceleration and deceleration lanes. The other common improvement is the bridges carrying 495 over the Mass Pike, so over I90, and over the MBTA Worcester line just to the north of there are replaced with newer, higher bridges in all alternatives. There's also a northbound auxiliary lane that's included from the northbound on-ramp up to Route 9. So when you enter into 495 coming from the Mass Pike and heading northbound, that acceleration lane is extended all the way up to the Route 9 off-ramp. And then finally, the Fruit Street Bridge that crosses over 495 just to the south of the interchange is replaced. That's a relatively tight bridge. The abutments are close to the highway. It's relatively low for what we need. So as part of the interchange improvements, those abutments, they need to move. They need to move further back so we can fit what we need to do under them. So the first concept that met the purpose and need is concept 14.5. I'm going to point some of the key elements out. First, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a blue line that comes down here. That is a direct connection ramp for people heading westbound on I90 who want to go southbound on 495. So currently, if you're going southbound, you have to pass under 495, you exit in that loop ramp, and then you go through that weave, and you have to go to the right and then down to 495. So this alternative eliminates that move and instead provides a direct connection down to 495. It also provides a direct connection if you're heading westbound on 495 and want to go up northbound on 495. So right now you exit here, the loop ramp, come around this way, and then go up. In this alternative, you just bypass that northwest quadrant. What that does is it allows for the elimination of this loop ramp, which, as I mentioned, that with the curves, the acceleration, deceleration lanes, the weaves, all associated with that loop ramp, that's a major contributor to congestion and crash Something important to note about this westbound to southbound movement, though, is that it comes in on the median side or the left side of the 495 southbound highway. So normally the ramps come in on the right side. That's the preferred, the desirable condition. For this to work, it would have to come in on the left side or the median side, the high-speed side. So that's something from a design standpoint, it's not technically wrong, but it's not a desirable condition. So the next alternative steps it up a couple levels. It introduces additional flyovers, so the eastbound to northbound movement flies over the interchange and continues north. There's a direct connection that's introduced from northbound to eastbound, right here. Something to note with those flyovers, in this one and the previous alternative, is they're very tall. We're looking at 50, 55 feet high because it's a stacked interchange. So each level that you add, it just gets progressively higher. But what this alternative does, it provides a lot of direct connection movements. It also allows for the elimination of this loop ramp in addition to this one. Just goes back to what I was saying as far as the loop ramps from a crash and congestion standpoint. Those are major drivers of the conditions that are out there today. Like 14.5, though, this westbound to southbound movement also has to come in on the median side, or the left-hand side. And then finally, concept C2, that was the third alternative we looked at that met the purpose and need. This one takes a little bit of a different approach. It tries to use the existing fill as much as it can and avoids that westbound to southbound flyover. It does that by staying tight to the highway and then looping through the former toll plaza area and then south. So you can see there's a lot of movements going on in this area. The difference between this and the existing condition is these ramps are braided, so they're over each other. They bridge over each other. So that's how we're able to eliminate all of the weaving movements going through the interchange. And when we get later in the presentation, we have a series of renderings, before and after renderings and videos that should help kind of clarify what's going on in this area. You know, it's tough to see on this scale. Like the other, like set 22.3, it allows for the elimination of these two loop ramps. And it's important to note that this westbound to southbound move now comes in on the right side, or the slow speed side of 495 southbound. And in general, as we go through this a little bit later, you'll see all of the curve speed, the speeds are increased, the radiuses are better, the acceleration lanes are better, deceleration lanes are better than what's out there today. So our next step is we did an extensive alternative analysis evaluation process. We looked at 100 plus categories originally. We narrowed it down to, I think, 25 or 26 criteria that we used to evaluate and compare across alternatives. So looking at them in different categories now, the first category is safety, one of the primary drivers of this project. And so the highlighted sections here, the highlighted boxes, we highlighted them to kind of, those are the criteria that really helped help us differentiate across alternatives. So we highlighted them for the purpose of this discussion. But these two rows, top rows here, really tell the story of this category. The reduction in yearly societal costs for predicted congestion and crashes. In other words, what are we projecting from a crash rate reduction standpoint? And the bottom line is we're seeing significant reduction in projected crashes across all alternatives. Because we're addressing the weaving, we're eliminating the weave conditions, we're improving the acceleration and deceleration lanes, and we're removing those tight radius loop ramps that are there. Our analysis was showing that the projected crashes associated with the final build condition are significantly reduced over what we would see in a no build condition. Just moving on to some of these key differentiators highlighted. The low speed curves that I mentioned. Currently there's 18 movements that have to pass through low speed curves. That gets reduced in C2 and 22.3 to 2 movements. Left-hand entrances, C2 has no left-hand entrance, while 14.5 and 22.3 have one. And then the visibility and distance to low-speed curves to decision points. That's kind of such a metric where we're trying to capture, can people see the interchange, the decision points far enough in advance to make their decisions. So we have 2 of those points on C2 and 14.5. Those can be mitigated by providing a long enough tangent, a straight section so that you can get in your lane and make sure you're in the right lane, and then with proper signage too. Mobility and operations, in other words, how's it going to work from a traffic perspective? Nothing's highlighted because they all work really well. All the alternatives work very well from the future projected traffic. I'll just pick on one of them here, delay. % reduction in vehicle hours compared to no build, so what are we expecting for a reduction in delay? 91%, 91%, 91%. So everything is significantly reduced from a delay standpoint from what we see. Yes?
I just had a question about when you talk about projected traffic, obviously there's projections due to increased building in the area, so there's more people, but also how is it taken into account for the fact that more people will use the interchange because it's now better? In other words, they've been avoiding it previously.
Yes. Want to take that, Chester?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jessica Leitz, a traffic engineer in the project. So we didn't add more trips for people who might be avoiding it now. What we did do was grow the traffic to the year 2040 based on population, land use, to try and capture, the demand of who would want to use this interchange. We got those numbers from CTPS, it's the Central Transportation Planning staff. They did take a look at what volumes they would plan for on this interchange versus the no-build interchange, and your peak hour, you were only seeing a difference of 100, 200 vehicles for some movements, so it didn't seem, substantial enough for us to factor into our analysis.
May I also suggest that improvements to this interchange would alleviate some of the traffic problems elsewhere, for example, 290, which is a very difficult westbound in the afternoon, eastbound in the morning, where people might be avoiding this interchange who are headed north. So if we look at it in a larger perspective, it might actually improve the overall system performance, even though it might direct more traffic through the interchange.
And we believe that to be the case. We haven't modeled as far as 290, but certainly the Route 9 interchange, we expect that to operate. This isn't fixing Route 9, but that auxiliary lane helps that interchange operate a little bit better. We expect improvements to this interchange will help the main lines. If you just kind of step further out, it's just going to help from a regional standpoint as well.
The next category we looked at was the environmental considerations. We mentioned that this interchange is in the middle of wetlands. When the Mass Pike was built, it filled wetlands. When 495 was built, it filled some more wetlands. And then when the interchange was built, it filled a lot more. So it's something that we need to be cognizant of from an impact standpoint, a permitting standpoint. So it's kind of helps guide us through the process. So just picking out some of these categories here, the permanent wetland impacts. C2 and 14.5 have the least amount of impacts at 1.9 acres. Skipping a couple rows down, opportunities for on-site mitigation. So we need to, with the wetlands that we're filling, we need to mitigate, and in other words, replicate them either on-site or off-site. By eliminating the loop ramps, which were when they built the loop ramps, they filled wetlands to build those loop ramps. So by eliminating the need for those for those loop ramps, we're able to excavate out that fill and restore historic wetlands. So from a hydraulic connectivity standpoint, a wildlife standpoint, it's a net positive where we can actually restore what was there before.
Do you know how much acreage that is? I'm curious. That
So
you're actually restoring by removing unnecessary loop.
So those two loop ramps open up 7.8 acres. So not all of it will be wetland mitigation. There's different things that you can do within that area in terms of stormwater treatment, flood mitigation, things like that. But it does open up 7.8 acres. So that's a pretty good amount of land, really. So that's for the alternatives that removed both of those loop ramps. So that was C2 and 22.3. 14.5 only removed one, so it didn't open up as much land. And then just one other, Article 97, Ryan mentioned the DCR property. There's Article 97, so that is land that is defined as protected open space. It takes an act of the legislature to, if we impact that land, it needs to be transferred and replicated or mitigated. It's a process to do that. C2 avoids the Article 97 impacts. We're able to, nothing crosses over the property line and impacts that protected land. And then the next category we looked at was construction challenges. So we're rebuilding an existing interchange on top of an existing functioning interchange. It's a complicated process to do. It's going to be a lengthy process. So we're estimating 4.5 years to rebuild this interchange. The highlighted areas here, what we're seeing, C2 allows us to build more of the interchange offline. We are shifting 495 northbound into the median. So we're shifting the southbound and northbound roadways closer together. And what that allows us to do is build the bridges offline. So instead of trying to rebuild the bridge lane by lane on its existing footprint, we can build a bridge offline out of the way of the traffic and then shift the traffic onto that new bridge. So that just accelerates the construction. It reduces the impacts to the traveling public. So that's what we're capturing with these categories here, the complexity of construction and the impacts to traffic management. The other thing to note here is, actually, I'll skip to this one. The economic impacts category, this is looking at what that construction does from an economic impact, particularly to the driving public, and you mentioned the amount of freight movement that comes through here. C2 allows us, we can start, by building more offline, we can start pulling apart traffic, because right now everything goes through that toll plaza area. So C2 gives us the chance to kind of start pulling out some of those movements early and get traffic out of there and through the interchange area quicker. So by doing that, you're reducing the impacts as you're building each successive move around, it gives you the chance to pull more and more users out of that heavy congestion area. System preservation, this was just really looking at, are we building something that is prohibitively or extremely expensive to maintain when compared to the others? And basically, they're all similar from a cost to maintain, a system preservation category. And then finally, the cost. So C2 is just under 300 million at 296 million. 14.5 is 345 million. And 22.3 is 413 million. So because of all that and considering all that, Mass DOT has identified C2 as the preferred alternative. So just quickly recapping.
One thing, so I'm not sure how many folks came to the round 2 of the public presentation meetings. We showed almost the identical last 10 or so slides where we showed the alternatives, and we showed all the 26 different categories and criteria without the green designations to show kind of the differentiation. They're just kind of blank, and when we put them up there, and like I said, we stepped back, and without exception, at all the legislative meetings, at all the stakeholder meetings, and at each one of the public meetings and the environmental agency meetings, without exception, at some point during the meeting, somebody said, "Oh, so you're gonna go build C2, right?" And we kind of stepped back and we kept our mouth shut because we wanted to see and hear again what the users and the residents saw as the best alternative. And it's not all the time that our engineering and our analytical data and investigation so closely matches what the people want to see, what the users want to see. So this is kind of a great success story. All the criteria that we looked at really supported C2, and all the comments that we got during the public and stakeholder process also supported C2. It's also not that often that the alternative that we all want to see is the cheapest alternative. That's another good story.
So just running through again quickly. So from a safety standpoint, C2 eliminates the left-hand entrance, and it has the least number of low-speed curves in the final condition. Environmental considerations is no Article 97 impacts. It also opens up 7.8 acres of land available for mitigation. It's 4 years to construct. Again, that's going to depend on when the notice to proceed is issued to the contractor. Did it catch a construction season before the winter shutdown times and things like that? But generally, we're looking at about 4 years. Economic impacts has the lowest user cost during construction. I'll just get to the bottom there. Construction, it's the lowest construction cost by a fairly sizable margin. Now we're going to run through a series of renderings before and after, and then some videos.
Just a quick question. So what's the projected start time? It is for 4.5 years. 220, oh, it's coming later.
We'll get to that at the end. Yeah. And I'd also like to point out, this entire presentation is going to be online. We look at it and we live it every day, so we know exactly where all these ramps go, and we can picture very clearly where things go. And I realize that it might be tough to do that as we're kind of flipping through. If you'd like us to stop to ask questions, or if you'd like us to rerun the videos more than once, we're happy to do so. But within the next couple weeks or so, it'll be on the project-specific webpage, so you can sit there at your home computer and look through it as much as you'd like.
Okay, so I'm going to run through a series of stills. Each one's going to have an existing conditions, and then the exact same view with the proposed conditions, so you get an idea of how it changes from what it looks like right now to what it would be when the project is complete. So we're going to start off looking at the existing conditions north on 495, 290. So this is 90 running off in the distance right here. This is the former Toll Plaza area. Over here is Cumberland Farms. And this right here is 495 Northbound and Southbound. And this is the proposed condition. Now, a couple things to point out here. You can see that the median is a lot narrower than it was, or than it is currently. One of the advantages to this alternative is that we're able to shift 495 northbound all the way into the median. It makes the construction of the bridges over 90 and the commuter route much easier. What you'll also see right here is this southbound on-ramp. And just to let you see it one more time, all the way over here, and then it shifts all the way out to there.
And I think Jonathan's going to focus on that particular movement a little bit here to highlight the differences between existing and future conditions. But I think just about everything he says about this particular movement really carries through a lot of the rest of the movements. We're increasing the radius, we're increasing the design speed, which helps reduce the safety concerns and to reduce congestion. Also keeping, each movement has its own lane and reducing the weaves. The conversation he's going to have here carries through a lot of the movements throughout the interchange.
Absolutely.
So as a twice daily user of this interchange, I will happily pay my gas taxes to make that one movement work. Because it is so tight and there is a contour difference, and every truck stalls out making that turn, which backs everyone up. That one thing.
Would you like to come and get
No. I'm going to say thank you, because I think you have the correct, what do I know? I'm not an engineer, but just visually a better radius. I assume that you'll have a climbing lane up, down into Hopkinton, and that'll make a lot of difference, because just this morning, the truck is going very slow, and everyone behind them is extremely frustrated. So if you're not in the left lane, you're going to get cut off as everybody pulls out into the center lane or the left lane at 35 or 40 miles an hour to try to get around the truck that they've been stuck behind, so.
That's exactly right.
So using that as an example, we've increased the radius dramatically. Right now, it's right around 30 miles an hour is the best you can get on that turn. And this is up around 45 miles an hour now. In addition, there's a full shoulder on the outside, and it's 2 lanes. So it's taking eastbound and westbound 90 traffic and putting it on 495 southbound, just as it is today. But there's 2 lanes, one that carries the eastbound traffic on the outside, as Ryan said. The westbound also has its own lane, and those are the lanes that you come on from. You don't have to switch lanes when you come from eastbound or westbound to get to southbound. And then somewhere down here, there's an acceleration lane, and then an additional 1,500 feet after that for the auxiliary lane. Taking the opposite look, we have I90 right here in the foreground. This is the Sudbury River, crossing underneath 495 and 90. The toll plaza is off in this corner now, and this is 495 southbound and 495 northbound. These are the loop ramps that everyone uses to get to the toll plaza right now. And looking at the proposed condition, what you can really see from this, and I'll flip it one more time just so you can see it again, is right here is where 495 northbound used to be, and here is where it would be in the proposed condition. So you can see how much we've squished the space out of the median to use it for the proposed roadway. What you can also see right here is this is the eastbound to northbound movement, the I90 eastbound to 495 northbound movement. And a lot of these movements have been separated out, so eastbound to northbound and I90 westbound to 495 northbound are on their own separate ramps, and they enter onto 495 northbound separately. And then the northbound movement to I90 eastbound is right here. And it's now just a simple slip ramp style as opposed to going through this loop ramp, around, meeting up with the other traffic and coming on together. I'll look within the toll plaza. This is where 495 and 90 meet. This is 495. This is 90 in this direction. This is the toll plaza. And I look at the proposed condition. So Joe was talking about grading the ramps before. You can really you start to get a feel for it here. This is the I90 westbound to 495 southbound ramp, and you can see it crosses over all of these other ramps without requiring you to weave with any other traffic. And then you simply meet up with the eastbound traffic and you stay in your own lane if you want to. You can change lanes if you really want to. There's no reason to, but if you really want to, you can. And you meet up with 495 southbound. Similarly, eastbound is coming on and meeting up with you at that same point. Looking the other direction now, we are looking from I90 into the toll plaza. So this is the 2-lane ramp coming off of I90 eastbound, entering into the toll plaza to go to 495 northbound and southbound. And this is what the proposed condition would look like. So you can see how instead of being 2 lanes coming on and then meeting up with your westbound traffic that also was looking to go to 495 northbound and southbound, and having that weaving area that exists out there today, you have 2 separated movements that diverged somewhere around here. And then all of your westbound movement is carried over and meets up with the eastbound without having any of that weaving movement. Looking from 495 into the toll plaza, this is the toll plaza right up here. This is the connection bridge from the loop ramp that loops around from 495 northbound. This is 495 northbound. This is 495 southbound, and off in the distance there is I-90. And then your proposed condition, we talked about removing those loop ramps. You can see that the loop ramp is completely gone in this proposed view. One thing to note, the loop ramp that exists out there today, going from southbound to eastbound, that's maintained, but with much improved geometry. Right now you have a very short curve, very tight curve, and then it's nice and flat in the toll plaza area, and then you tighten up really, really fast trying to get onto 90. That's all smoothed out, so it's a nice simple geometry, and you won't have that slow, slow, fast, fast, slow, slow feel going on anymore. Taking a look at I-90, what I-90 is going to look like, we're looking west, just off of 495 southbound. This is where your connection ramps currently are into the toll plaza. The toll plaza is right here, and the Sudbury River's running right over here. And this is what the proposed condition looks like. So you can see the loop ramp used to be right here, and we've replaced it with a flyover right there, and a forward flyover for your westbound on-ramp right here. Looking in the other direction, so now we're looking east towards Boston. This is 495 northbound, 495 southbound. The Cumberland Farms facility is right here, this white splotch. And then your proposed condition, and again you can see that 90 slip ramp from 495 northbound, that 90 eastbound connection. Right here, traveling just next to Cumberland Farms, and just north of the railroad, right here, is your westbound to northbound movement, say your I-90 westbound to 495 northbound movement. All right, a couple of videos.
So is there any land taking as part of this all, or does the state basically own all of that?
Yeah, we're still working some of that out, but what's pretty impressive about this project is because there's so much land as part of the interchange already, and because we work so hard to keep a lot of the movements, albeit grade separated now, but still working through that existing toll plaza area, there are not planned to be extensive takings as part of this project.
I think right now we're looking at less than an acre, which is important for the people whose property it is, but again, like Jonathan said, for a project of this scale, not significant.
What's the total acreage for the whole sort of project area? A couple hundred, gosh, a couple hundred acres?
I don't know if I've ever calculated it out. Joe, do you know?
Yes?
I would say at least 100. I don't know either, but it's pretty
Good
big.
question. Don't have the answer. We're thinking 100 or greater, but just to get a sense of scale.
So I'll run this video. So we're gonna do a little spin around over the whole interchange here. You can really see the braiding as we're spinning around. And again, that simplified geometry right here on this loop ramp, where it was once really, really flat in that area, it makes a big difference on that southbound to eastbound movement. We're gonna do a couple drive-throughs now. So we're going from 495 northbound through the interchange. We're gonna be in the left lane, so we're gonna be going pretty fast, and I'll point out some sites along the way.
If folks would like to see any of these again, we're happy to play them again, just let us know.
So your northbound to I-90 westbound movement has just exited off. And crossing over. At the same time, we've opened up for the eastbound I-90 movement, and that just exited off. And now we're going to cross over I-90. Your I-90 eastbound traffic is entering on to 495 northbound. Then that lane merges in, and your I-90 westbound traffic to 495 northbound merges on. And then as we talked about, this lane right here, this fourth lane, continues as an auxiliary lane all the way up to the Route 9 eastbound exit. That's about 3,000 feet long or so, about 2/3 of a mile.
Did you give any consideration to merging the westbound to northbound and eastbound to northbound ramps before merging them with 495? Only because I see two merges there, two merge points. I just didn't know if it would be easier to do the, again, armchair, the internet's a dangerous thing, right? Armchair engineer. If you merge those two early and then that combined traffic merges into 495, if that would help with the Route 9.
Yeah, there are some environmental issues running along the sides of 495, and
Okay.
another one of the benefits of shifting 495 northbound into the median is that we didn't have to widen out so much into the side wetlands that run along that area. There's also some intermittent streams and some open water on that side, and that a lot of that plays into where the northbound, the westbound to northbound movement enters onto 495 northbound.
The other thing is if you combine them into a single ramp, and then even if it's 2 lanes, and then combine it on, the westbound to northbound comes on closer to Route 9, so you're pushing 2 lanes of traffic merging closer to Route
Farther
9.
north to the Route
So you're actually pushing more traffic into that friction zone. So if you can pull out a movement and combine them in earlier, it removes a good chunk of that traffic and allows them to distribute before you push on the westbound to northbound.
I have concerns that I've seen from things in the past, and I can't tell how this is different, but the interchange between 290 or Route 85 in Hudson area that goes on to 495 with those big sweeping curves where the trucks roll over all the time. And the same with Cimarano Drive, where it's really high up at an angle, there's wind and ice all the time. Actually, my brother-in-law was in an accident there. It's a horrible intersection. So how is all of this looping and raised structure? Those were not built that long ago, guys, so I don't consider them brilliance in engineering. So how is this going to be different and mitigate some of those issues with the curves and the ice and the wind and all of that?
One thing is, it's going to be lower. You know, I mentioned some of the alternatives were 50, 55 feet high because they were stacked on top of each other. With this alternative, they're not stacked. They're actually, the high points are kind of crossing like that. So we're actually, the bridges are not as high as what you would see at Cimarano. So I think we're like 30 feet high.
Yeah, so we're talking the westbound to southbound ramp here, the I90 westbound to 495 southbound ramp. That one's about 35 feet high.
So do you guys
Similarly
do
on this ramp right
environmental
here.
studies for crosswinds and ice whipping on the roads as they sort of shear sideways and things like that?
Another advantage that this interchange design has is actually the way that it's going to be striped. It sounds silly, but a lot of the ramps in the past have been striped as very large lanes with very tiny shoulders on either side. And by striping these roadways where you have a typical 12-foot wide lane where everyone goes, there's space for snow storage. So we can actually clear that area on every ramp. Also, all of the ramps have been designed with very low running slopes. So you're not climbing at a very fast clip like you are on some of those other interchanges.
And those interchanges, the rain doesn't run off of them very easily either. I don't know where the rain goes, but.
The rainfall is something we certainly consider as part of the design. If there are snow and ice operations or deficiencies that you're seeing, then let us know or let District 3 know. The structures always need a little bit more attention than a typical roadway just because of the freeze thaw. So if you're seeing places that you see concerns, we need to convey that to our district
Always.
operations.
I think the constant radius, the closer you get to a constant radius here will help with that as well, because Cimarano northbound, it's not a constant radius, it tightens and then opens up again. And so if you've never been on that ramp and you go into it, suddenly it's like, whoa, I got a break, because you got a long ramp and people don't tend to slow down until they get to that point. If it's a more constant radius, it might be a little bit easier. Can I ask what the design speed of the various ramps are? I mean, if that's not too nerdy.
No, it's certainly.
So every ramp except for this loop ramp right here, the southbound to eastbound ramp that I talked about before, has a design speed of at least 45 miles an hour. The northbound to eastbound ramp was designed to 50 miles an hour, as was the westbound to northbound ramp. All the other ramps are 45. At a minimum, some portions of it have larger radii that allow you to go a little bit faster, but the minimum speed was designed for 45.
That's compared to the existing loop ramp design speed of,
Generally, all of them are 25 or 30 miles an hour.
that's
That's being generous.
when you're making the comment about the trucks rolling over. Those are those types of
I
ramps.
got to see one of those, that wasn't any fun. The other thing is I take the commuter rail also, and I know there are plans underway to hopefully in my lifetime expand the commuter rail into Boston. And I'm kind of thinking some of it would be taller trains and things like that, maybe even Amtrak type lines. Did the height of these allow larger, taller things to pass under them? I'm kind of a future person, right? If this is 5 or 10 years out, I want to kind of make sure
Well,
we're,
and so are we, because we
Yeah.
don't want to invest this type of money into infrastructure that then precludes somebody else from doing something. So we've met with the MBTA a couple times, I'll let you speak to the bridge height, but they also have plans or desires for a third track through there.
Yep.
So we've talked to them about timing of that, they're not quite sure. We've talked to them primarily about where in relation to the other two tracks they'd like to see that, and they've let us know. So as I think Joe mentioned at the beginning, we're replacing the 495 bridge over the track and the I90 bridge over the track. Each of those new structures will be wide enough to accommodate that third lane whenever that happens. So bridges.
And just from a clearance standpoint, we've been working with the T to make sure that we can accommodate, they run double stack trains out here now from a.
they're probably going to get bigger if they eventually get any kind of an Amtrak-y thing in there.
Yeah, which Amtrak does run through here, out to Chicago, but the Lake Shores, yeah. So we've been coordinating with them, we're making sure that we give them the height they need. Nice thing is, especially on the 495 bridge, it's pretty high now, actually.
Yeah.
So that's not, the height is not the driver on that one. So, and then we're just like Ryan said, we're just making sure, the one thing they said is, we're good on the height if you can just push it out a little wider to give us room for if we ever are able to run a third track, so we're doing that as we're replacing.
I also think the Federal Railway Administration establishes width and height maximum.
Yeah, there's plates that you use to establish the height and the width, and that's what we're working with them on.
Sorry.
So you're going to rebuild the bridge, the 495 bridge over 90 to widen the lanes for that fourth lane that goes between 90 and 9?
No. So that fourth lane actually comes on all the way up by Flanders Road. The main driver of replacing these structures is the location of where the abutments are today. So if you ever go southbound on 495 and want to get on 90 eastbound, you'll notice that that outermost acceleration lane ends right at the bridge. And that's because there is nowhere else for that lane to go. The abutment's already there. And same thing coming from 90 westbound trying to get to 495. The acceleration or deceleration lanes to get off of 90 start right after the bridge because there's nowhere else for the lanes to be.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that when they did the Route 2 and 495 bridge, they made them a little bit wider because for the possibility that they might be adding a fourth lane to 495. So are you considering that?
I haven't heard that. We will check back at the department on that.
They made the bridges just a little bit wider
Yeah.
in case they wanted to do that.
And I've had projects in the past where we have certainly done that, again, to not spend infrastructure money now, just to have to redo something in the future, so. That in the district, potential for a fourth lane.
So you guys are forecasting sort of economic impact to the users. I'm guessing that's mostly related to lengthening commutes? Any estimates of, during construction, how much longer commutes are gonna be? Because it's already horrible.
I mean, we're working on the construction staging right now, so we're not far enough along in that process yet. By the design public hearing, we'll have more information on how this actually gets built. But generally, we're trying to build as much of it offline as possible and open up as many of those outer ramps as possible early to peel those drivers out of the existing interchange and out of the construction. I know that doesn't give you the answer that you want, but that's where we're at.
And we understand that, and we're sensitive to that, which is why it was part of our matrix. We want to be sure that, you know, construction's never easy, get it, but we want to make it as easy and as least disruptive as possible. So that's how we also look at our construction staging, to pull those movements out to, you know, for example, maybe this westbound to northbound ramp gets built earlier, so traffic who wants to make that movement, it's a significant number of folks who want to make that movement, can start using that earlier in the construction process and avoid the rest of the area entirely. Similar with northbound to eastbound, the more we can build offline up front, the more we can get people out of the main construction zone.
Probably the only local resident here that lives on Flanders Road. So can you address to me during the construction phase? First of all, I think at the prior meeting, they were going to replace the Flanders Road bridge where I90 went over Flanders Road. It looks like that's no longer the case. You're not replacing that bridge, right? So that's not affected. As somebody who's on the east side of 495 and south of the Mass Pike, I'm constantly going up Flanders Road and also Fruit Street because sometimes that's the better way to get to Westboro. What will be the impact? Will there be closures of Fruit Street, or will it always be left open? And the 495 bridge over Flanders Road, how will that be affected during the process?
So as far as Fruit Street, we haven't determined yet if it would be a full closure or a stage construction. You could do it in such a way that you do alternating, you put the temporary signals and you do the alternating traffic and close one lane at a time. So that's like Jonathan mentioned, we're really just starting to dive into how this thing, from a staging standpoint, is going to get done. So those are things that we're looking at now as far as whether it should be full closure or alternating. They both seem viable, it just depends on how that works from an impact standpoint to the residents and so on. As far as Flanders, which Flanders over?
The one you are going to be doing, you're not going to have any impact on the I90 bridge over
Right,
Flanders.
so of the four, out of the four bridges, currently only 495 northbound over Flanders has any work being done to it.
And that's, we're anticipating it's most likely going to be a superstructure replacement. So just replace the superstructure up there.
These are fantastic questions that we're not even quite fleshed out yet. We're moving from concept to design, and then from design into constructability. There'll be a couple more of these public meetings that further down the road that we might be able to have more solid answers for you.
I'm also from Westbound, but I don't live in Flanders. I live downtown. I could have sworn at the Board of Selectmen's meeting in the last 2 months. Are they also, and this is maybe just outside of your project area, aren't they fully replacing a 1920s Fruit Street Bridge where they're going to basically close the road for a year or two? And
I don't know the duration, but people get confused a lot because this is Hopkinton, Westboro, in both towns.
Right on the,
It includes
right.
Fruit Street Bridge.
Correct.
That is a Hopkinton, Westboro Fruit Street Bridge.
So is that a Mass DOT project?
It's a Mass DOT project. It's southeast of our project limits. It carries Fruit Street over the commuter rail and the Sudbury River. It's down by the gun club, close to Flanders.
So how does that just roll into this, into what you're all thinking?
As far as I can tell now, and that's still in design development, but as far as I can tell now, that'll be advertised probably this year or next, or in 2020, and under construction in 2021 and 2022. And the hope and the expectation is that, and don't quote me on that because I'm not the PM on that job, but my current understanding is that contractor we'll have that bridge fully constructed and be out
Before
of
you
there
start.
before our contractor shows up for this.
Thank you. Just for clarity, which northbound or southbound is going into the median? Are you moving northbound west or southbound east?
Northbound goes west. Which is part of the reason why the northbound over Flanders Road gets replaced and not south.
Right.
That
In a different place.
that barrel stays generally in 6. So,
Well, the 90 east going to 495 south, will that ramp be built independently, like you're talking about the west to north?
uncertain at this point. We do put together a construction staging plan as part of the procurement documents. I'll get into this a little bit more later. This project's going to go design build. So we prepare construction staging plans to kind of prove to ourselves that it could be built. And then we give it out to a design build entity that they have the ability to kind of shuffle the entire thing on. So we try and put limitations on them, what they can build when, to kind of reduce the impacts on the general public. But in general, means and methods is up to them.
One other sort of funny question. So this is off-site mitigation, basically. Whatever you do to Fruit Street and Flanders will surely impact what is already complicated situation with the Rotary in downtown Westboro. That we walk by, could probably give you the traffic counts for 30, 135 fairly easily. So I'm just wondering how that's going to get resolved, because that's going to have a huge impact on the downtown Westboro community.
I think we're kind of wait to see how the other bridge goes.
Okay. Let your other project manager test it out.
And learn, we'll all learn some lessons from how that goes, and we'll help that inform how we do this. But continue.
Yeah, we still have some more videos to watch. So we saw the 495 northbound through the interchange. We'll take a look at I90 westbound through the interchange. So Cumberland Farms is off over here. And I90 to 495 northbound is exiting off. Crossed over the rail. The lane is opened up right here for the westbound to southbound movement, and we just after crossing under 495, we exit off and cross over 90. Then we have a 2-lane ramp coming over, and that's carrying your northbound and southbound traffic, similar to today, except you have your full acceleration lanes, a much higher design speed, and a full shoulder on the outside. Right now, when you come on to I-90, you're right up against the edge of the road, and if there's a crash, or if there's a maintenance going on, or if there's snow, that right lane is less helpful than it normally is.
How far will you carry the merge lanes up the hill?
So you have your acceleration distance. We start off making sure that we're meeting the federal guidelines for proper acceleration distance. Then we took a look at how the traffic model was working. We modeled the entire interchange and took a look at how vehicles were merging and what kind of space they had to merge with the mainline traffic at that point. And if we needed to extend the acceleration lane a little farther there, we did. And then after that, there's a required length of 1,500 feet beyond the acceleration lane for an auxiliary lane when you have a 2-lane entrance.
I mean, it is uphill, so it does tend to drag, slow-moving trucks again, up that hill. So
That's
the longer,
actually factored into the calculation to a great impact if
Right.
it's lengthened out.
you have the rest area,
Yeah.
across the traffic.
Yeah,
One of the things about the acceleration lanes right now, too, is that you're coming on at a very slow speed. So the trucks theoretically should be at a higher speed when coming on, so they don't need as much time to get up to highway speed once they've merged onto the main line. Did you have something?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Sorry.
So 4 to 5 years construction, did someone ask this already? When do we think it's going to start?
You're stealing their thunder.
A couple slides ahead.
We'll
Sorry.
get to that at the end.
We have a couple more videos.
I'll be dead before this is over.
No.
So we're going to follow through a couple ramps now. We're going to do the I90 westbound to 495 southbound movement. We'll be up a little higher here, so we'll be able to see exactly where we're going and what's coming up ahead. So just for reference, that's the westbound to northbound movement, exiting off, crossing over the right next to the MBTA line. Now we're exiting into the deceleration lane, and just when we get to 495, we exit off of the main line. So now we are in our, on the ramp to 495 southbound. We're going to cross over 90. Cross over all of the ramps that are heading to 90. And then meet up with the 495 southbound lane that's from I90 eastbound. So we are in this lane right here. And we merge in with 495 southbound. The outside lane continues for a distance to get up to acceleration speed, or mainline speed. And then that merges in. And then we have another 1,500 feet before the next lane merges in.
Kind of answers your last question too. You've got the two lanes, you've got a distance to kind of move onto the main line and then move over.
The next one is southbound, I495 southbound to I90 westbound. So we're exiting off right here before we get to I90. We're in this lane. And one thing to note right here, you can see this row of trucks right here. The traffic model you see in front of you is based off of the actual truck percentages that are forecasted for this interchange. So you can see how many trucks are moving through this interchange every day. This ramp is carrying eastbound and westbound traffic, but you have your own lane. You never have to change a lane once you've chosen your destination. Eastbound exits off, we're in westbound lane. We're merging with the northbound traffic, so we're in the right lane. Again, you can see another row, a little caravan of trucks right there. This ramp actually handles, of the total vehicles that are on this ramp, 1 out of every 4 vehicles is a truck over the course of the day. The right lane merges on and merges in right here. And then you have another 1,500 feet before the next lane merges in.
I think the gentleman was just looking for the Lakewood signaling condition B.
Next slide, Brian.
Next
Slide,
slide,
Brian.
Ryan.
You guys want to watch it again?
Let's go to the next slide.
I'm guessing that there's going to be a reduction in sound in that area, correct, as a neighbor?
We're doing a noise analysis as part of state federal regulations for a project like this. This is called a Type 1 project. We're required to do a noise analysis, and if noise barriers are reasonable and feasible, then we build them as part of the project. That analysis is currently being conducted. I'm going to go right to the second bullet. This requires a draft environmental impact report under MEPA. The noise analysis will be part of that EIR. Which will probably come out for public review and comment September, October timeframe. But next steps, finish this third round of public outreach. This is our 7th time giving this presentation. We have one more tomorrow night in Holliston, and then we're going to meeting next week just focused on the environmental, state and federal and local environmental agencies next week. And that kind of concludes this third round of public meetings. We are already working on the draft EIR, assembling all the pieces. It's under review. It'll come out early this fall. At that point, we'll get a secretary certificate from EOEA, and we're, at the same time, we're working on 25% design for the overall project. Once we have an accepted 25% design from the department, we'll come out in front of you folks again for a 25% design public hearing. At that point, we'll clearly be beyond the concept stage and have more definitive design details, maybe some more information about construction staging. Yes, sir.
What is a 25% design?
25% design. Good way of answering that?
Quickest way to say it's design at 25% complete. But it's, certain elements are developed to, bridge design has a little less detail. Some of the other elements are developed a little bit more. So in general, we call it 25% design because it's, roughly speaking, it's when it's about 25% complete.
It's a major design submittal for the department. It's the first time that the public, our internal reviewers and the public really get to see, not at a full design, not at a concept design, but at a solid level, what everything's going to look like, what the standards are going to be, what the cost is going to be, maybe some construction staging. At that point, like I mentioned, we come out to you folks to show more detail what it looks like. Again, the intent of that meeting is to get your input on that particular design. Once we have an accepted 25% design, we feel like we have enough information to start to pursue the environmental permits. This is going to require some local approvals, but primarily state level approvals and federal level approvals. It's going to require variance from the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. It's going to require water quality cert under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act, individual Army Corps of Engineer permit from Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, the noise analysis. Because of the sensitivity, the magnitude of our impacts, those are fairly thorough application and review processes. So we need to be at 25% before we get into those. And at that point, I mentioned this earlier, it's going to go out to design, build, procurement. Most of the department's projects are design, bid, build. What that means is we take a project design to 100% design. We put that out in the street and say, qualified contractors, come bid on this, let us know how much you'd like to charge us to go ahead and build this, just as we said. Design build is an innovative procurement method where we take the 25% design, we put that on the street, and we ask contractors and engineers to team up into what we call a design build entity, and they tell us, one, why they're qualified, how they're going to do it, and how much they're going to charge us to take that 25% design to 100% design and construct the entire thing. Some of the benefits of design build are a lot of times contractors are good at building things, and engineers are good at designing things. They don't always kind of match each other. When you've got an engineer and a contractor on the same team, they can really be collaborative and find better solutions to how to build things and what to build. It might provide a better product, it might provide a shorter construction time frame, it might provide a lower cost or efficiencies in other ways. So we're moving towards a little bit more design build. The other benefit here is because the contractor identifies how exactly they want to construct the project, they might say, that Fruit Street Bridge, we need that replaced early in the project. So they'll task their engineer to design that bridge early. So the engineer will design it. As soon as it's designed, the contractor can start building that piece earlier than theoretically than they could in design bid build. While they're building that, the engineer can be designing the rest of the project. So really, the idea is it starts construction earlier and maybe makes it more effective and efficient. So we're going to try and utilize design build procurement on this project. Schedule, a couple questions about schedule. We've showed this before. It hasn't changed much. We're ahead on a couple of the items. We're behind on a couple of the items. But in general, we're in this middle line here. We certainly have a preferred alternative. We are deeply working on the MEPA documentation, the EIR, but we've also been working on 25% design, another term for 25% design in the design build world is the base technical concept. So we're kind of in the middle of this entire range. 2020, we expect to have an accepted 25% design or BTC. Then we'll get into the environmental permitting, go out for best value procurement for that design build entity. Right now, we're projecting construction to start in 2022. Joe mentioned it depends on when the design build entity gets their NTP. If they get it in February, well, then they get to start in that construction season, so it might be 2022 to 2026. If they get it in October or November, they've kind of missed that entire construction season. At that point, it'll probably be 2023 to 2026.
Question?
Yes, sir.
So if construction isn't going to start, say, for another 3 years, how does that impact how the state deals with repairs in the vicinity of the current interchange? You know, for instance, the bridge for going northbound on 495 has been repaired a number of times. And when it gets repaired, it's like, you know, there's since it's a single lane, there's like total closure of that direction, requires rerouting to another exit on 495 and stuff like that. Would the state actually be considering, say, delaying a particular repair if there's a bad section of road, or accelerating it? How does that work?
So for bridges, we have the district bridge maintenance section, and they're the ones that do the bridge inspections. All the bridges are inspected every 2 years. They come up with a list of repairs. They also prioritize those repairs. So we're at that point in construction, if we're going to be in 2020, 2022, whatever it is, they'll figure out, you know, what repairs are necessary. You know, we're not going to go out and spend millions of dollars repairing a bridge that we're going to take out. So that's all communicated through our bridge section, which the bridge section also reviews these plans and the design for this project. 495 was built in the 1960s, so service life of a bridge is 75 years. So a lot of them are getting towards that end of their service life. They need different, you know, amounts of repairs, depths of repairs, but it's something that we look at for the whole corridor. You know, we just did some major repairs on the ramp bridge over 495 to the turnpike probably 5 years ago. We did some cleaning, painting, stabilized some of the piers there. We didn't put a whole lot of money into that bridge because we knew eventually it was going to come out, and it is coming out as part of this project. So those are things that we do look at, and we do communicate with the designers as we're moving forward with the designs.
We have a project-specific webpage. Can be found here if you Google 495-90 Mass DOT. That'll probably be the first thing that pops up. There's a couple background presentations. I think round 1 and round 2 are up there.
And minutes too.
Minutes from past meetings, the previous meet, the ENF previous meet with Flyovers. So a lot of information up there. This presentation within the next couple of weeks will be up there. We also have a project-specific email address that comes directly to me. It comes to Mr. Curtis over here, and it comes to somebody in our Legislative and Community Affairs Department. We get a notification as soon as somebody emails, and we're real responsive to questions, concerns, requests for information for that as well. So please feel free to check on the project through the webpage or email us at any time.
Will the videos also be published on the website?
It's the expectation, yeah.
Yeah, Rob, if you want to see what that looks like, go to the North Washington site. So what we'll have to do is actually extract the videos from the presentation, because we PDF the presentation. And so we have to alternate tag all of the stills for somebody who's using assistive technology. And then what we'll have to do basically is use Jonathan's golden words as a script, and then have a running commentary with each video. And that'll get loaded on, I think it goes to the MassDOT's YouTube channel. There'll be a link out of the 495-90 website to MassDOT's YouTube channel, so it'll all hang together and be compliant. But me and Jeff will be off working on that in the next couple of weeks. So you'll get it.
So this is like 6 to 7 years until this is done when you factor everything. I get that they're big projects. When I went to one of the really early meetings, I think it was at the 495 corridor when this stuff was first sort of being thought about, probably 5 years ago, One of my thoughts, because I travel this road all the time, is that the population is increasing. I've lived out here for 30 years in Hudson, in Marlboro, in Sudbury. Population's increasing, traffic is increasing, trucks are increasing. Over the next 5 or 6 years, this is going to be continuing also. Populations are still growing. So one of my thoughts is, there's a 10-mile difference between the Framingham exit and 495 on the Pike, and then 495 and the Grafton exit. There's no place for those of us who are kind of in between the exits to get off, where most other exits are a lot closer together. So has any thought been put into that? Because I wouldn't even use the 495 exit if there was something more convenient that didn't take me out, too far. And the same when I was living in the Hudson, the same idea. And that would pull some of the commuters, I think, off of that interchange and let the trucks have at it, right?
I'm not aware of any new interchange projects. That's a planning level, regional level conversation for.
Who do I talk to about that? Because I think that's part of the solution.
Do you have any, you're kind of my conduit for information.
Yeah, I can give you my contact information, I'll look into it. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but I can look into our Office of Planning and the district.
Yeah, they're planning.
See if there's any discussions that relate to that.
Maybe Ethan,
Yeah, someone out of that show, probably, yeah.
We have a whole planning group that does kind of planning on the small scale stuff, but also
Yeah.
large term.
Because that sort of mitigates some of these issues, right? As growth happens, if you pull traffic off earlier or later or in between, it would potentially help these intersections.
Okay. If anybody know of other questions, I'd like to thank you again for coming. Do you have questions, sir?
Just looks like a good job. Like you say, it minimizes the merging of the ramps and makes things flow a little faster and better and safer. So looks like a good job.
We're excited about it. We're excited about it, like I said, from an engineering standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from a congestion and traffic operation standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from a regional kind of movement, quality of life, air quality standpoint. We think we've had a good process and we're excited about the alternative. Kind of checks all the boxes and has significant improvements for hundreds of thousands of people a day who use it.
We could put some of that technology up to the 290, 495.
That's next. Next time. Can I ask a question? I live in Shrewsbury, but I work in Hopkinton, and so, I know a little bit of some of the local stuff that's going on. What's the reception been in Hopkinton? Because you're not really expanding the footprint of the interchange. In fact, in some ways, you're shrinking it. Has that, I live 500 feet from 290, so I know that it's noisy and there's traffic, and that's just part of it. I got there after the highway got there, so, but I'm just wondering, because local opposition can really, cause, for very good reasons, can cause a big delay. Can you speak to how Hopkinton has received this?
I think everybody who lives anywhere within an hour of here and travels through here knows that at its core, it's a safety congestion. So safety, at least in the department standpoint, trumps a lot of things. Combined with the fact that this isn't a new interchange, it's an existing interchange, and we are considerably improving the safety and the congestion and the air quality. We haven't really heard anything. We've chatted with the folks quite a bit from that one residential neighborhood in the southwest quadrant of Roosevelt Farms. They've got questions about noise and they've got congestions about air quality, which are very, very valid concerns and questions. But everybody's really supportive of the project. Nobody's ever questioned the purpose or the need or why we're doing it. So
There were several people, not this current round of meetings, but the previous round, they actually said, we hear the crashes.
Yeah.
They hear the crashes from their homes, so they were like, yeah, if you can cut down on those, so we don't hear those crashes, those brakes, the trucks braking all the time, then we're seeing that as a plus.
And a lot of the things we're doing, I mentioned the noise analysis is still in process. We don't have the answers there yet. but just intuitively, a lot of the things that we're doing is gonna improve, in my non-technical opinion, improve the quality. Like, we're taking some of those movements out of those quadrants and moving it to the other quadrant, the commercial quadrant, or the industrial quadrant, or the DCR quadrant, away from the homes. In addition, that southbound 495 on-ramp that you've talked about, that you mentioned, you know, you've got trucks braking to get into that curve, maybe using their J-brakes, but certainly going through the curve, and then they really got to stomp on the gas to accelerate up. So with that smoothed out radius, they're not going to need to do that. So anecdotally, I think things are going to get better even for those folks. And we're not moving the interchange closer to their neighborhood. So generally, the response has been very positive. But to your point, that's why we're having the meeting here in Shrewsbury and in Hudson last night, and Holliston tomorrow, because there's not a lot of people immediately affected by the interchange that live right at the interchange. They live 20 minutes north, or 20 minutes south, or 20 minutes west. That's why we're out here to try and catch you folks at home, the users of the interchange. We're trying to catch you closer and closer. Okay, thank you again. Yes, sir.
Somebody else had mentioned 290, 495. Is that actually in design too, or is that, can you answer that, or do you know?
I don't know. That, I was going to say, round 2, where we showed the alternatives without exception, everybody said, so we think you should go build C2. Without exception, somebody at every one of those meetings asked about that interchange. That's, I manage this project. Do you know anything else about the?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, we recognize there's an issue there, definitely an issue. You know, the traffic's queuing up 495 southbound to 290. It's something that, you know, we've made some adjustments probably 4 or 5 years ago to some of the ramps through there, but it's something that we're still looking at and trying to come up with something that we think is going to work. There's a lot of competing interests there. You know, this building's right on the side of the ramp. There's a cemetery there. We have 3 bridges on 495 south. So we're looking at it. It's something that we're working on. It's not anywhere near where we're at with I90, 495, but it's something that's in the works. So.
Yeah, I heard that they were going to put a couple of lanes. They're going to, that ramp, they were going to expand it to 2 lanes.
Which, the 495 south?
495 south to 290 west.
Yeah, that's something that we're looking at, yes.
Kind of like a simple fix.
Yeah, simple.
Well,
And then you're on the inside, so the radius is shorter, and it's.
Well, the other ramp, the loop ramp is right up against it. So because it's a cloverleaf design, there's not a whole lot of room for shifting things. And approaching the exit, there's a bridge that goes right over, was it Lynch Boulevard? That kind of plays into how you enter that ramp also. And then there's a bridge just, 2 more bridges just north there, one over the river, and then another one over one of the local roads. So that all plays into kind of everything. But it is something that we're looking at. You know, we definitely know, you know, interstate to interstate connection. You know, there's a lot of traffic coming down 495 going to 290 now. I think a lot of traffic likes to go that way because they don't have to pay for the turnpike if they're heading over to a 395 or down to 84. But it's definitely something that's in the works.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.